everybody, and welcome to another brand new edition of T Watches a Scary Movie. My name is T, and of course, we are talking scary movies. I appreciate you tuning in for another brand new review. Remember, new episodes go up every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, but as I put out extra content throughout the week on my channel, the best way to stay up to date on everything that I'm dropping for you guys is to get subscribed to my Linktree. And you can do that by going to linktr.ee/T Scary Movie. If you get subscribed to my Linktree, that's going to get you access to my YouTube page for the video versions of the show, to your favorite podcasting platforms for the audio-only versions of the show, to my Letterboxd page for my movie rankings throughout the years and my written reviews, to my TikTok page for my short horror content, including movie news, movie premieres, and me trying to be funny if I am actually funny, and to my Fangoria page where you can get a discount on all your purchases from Fangoria, including a yearly subscription. So check out that Linktree, get subscribed wherever you are watching or listening so you can stay up to date on all the content that I'm dropping on my channel. And you're going to want to get subscribed because just like we did for season 1, tonight we are covering the first episode of season 2 of AMC's Interview with the Vampire. I covered season 1 a couple years ago when it debuted back in 2022. Season 2 just premiered, so we're talking episode 1 of that tonight, and I'm going to try to keep these reviews up for you. So get subscribed. Let me know that you actually want to hear about Interview with the Vampire, and I'll make sure that we keep cranking these out here for y'all. So with that, let's dive right on in. I'm going to try to approach this a little bit differently because I'm still trying to do it in a small amount of time, so you don't have to listen too long or anything. First, let's get this out the way. If you're unaware of what the Interview with the Vampire TV show is, it is an adaptation of Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles book series that she wrote a few decades back that tell the story of various vampires, but most pointedly focus on the vampire Lestat. And Interview with the Vampire so far is focusing on the first book out of the Vampire Chronicles, humbly titled Interview with the Vampire. It tells the story of Louis DuPont de Lac, played by Jacob Anderson, who is a young, gay, black Creole man living in New Orleans who happens to come across the vampire Lestat, played by Sam Reed. The two immediately find themselves obsessed with each other, in love, in lust, and the vampire Lestat decides that Louis shall be his next companion, and he shall turn Louis to join him in their never-ending afterlife. Now, after things kind of take a turn for the worse between the two of them, as we can see that when you share an afterlife together, you have all this time, and things like trust, things like willpower, things like decency aren't really things that vampires really, for the most part, feel the need to keep up with, and their relationship is strained, which brings about the young vampire Claudia, who Lestat decides to sire as a way to pacify Louis and bring them closer together. Now, Claudia was played by Bailey Bass in season 1 and has had the role taken over by Delaney Hales for season 2. And that's everything that's happening in the past. Because as we find out with Interview with the Vampire, the majority of what we're seeing is being told by the vampire Louis to Daniel Malloy, who is played by Eric Bogosian, who, if you've seen the movie before, because obviously there's a movie adaptation, this was the young interviewer played by Christian Slater, who in that film, Louis, played by Brad Pitt, recounts his entire backstory to him. We find out in this Interview with the Vampire TV series that Louis actually already did this interview with Daniel decades prior. And he himself wasn't that honest and upfront in this. And in a way to kind of regain a little bit of that lost humanity and take a second go about sharing this information, calls Daniel back to join him at his home and decides to tell the story again, but this time with all accuracies. And season 1 left off with us finding out that Louis' servant Rashid, or at least who we thought was Rashid, was actually the vampire Armand. Now, if you've seen the movie before, We know Armand was played by Antonio Banderas. This character, just like Lestat, fell in love with Louis immediately and wanted to have Louis for himself, and played a role in a number of terrible things that would happen, not just to Louis, but also to Lestat, to Claudia, and to others as well. That being said, Armand is typically portrayed more in the good sense of things in the movie and in a lot of the books that are out there. He's still a vampire, and he still has evil things that he does, but honestly, out of all the vampires we encounter in the Vampire Chronicles, like if Louis is gonna be like your center point, if he's going to be like your true north, I'd say Armand is only slightly under him, whereas Lestat's kind of towards the other side. He's the anti-hero of the bunch. But anyway, Season 1 ended with us finding out that Rashid is actually Armand, which begs questions about, was Louis being truthful about a lot of the information he is regaling to Daniel over Season 1? It also took us to the past where we found Louis and Claudia have found a way to kill Lestat and leave him dead in New Orleans so that they can make their escape overseas to Europe to fulfill Claudia's search of finding another vampire. Because when you think about how isolating this experience can be, and you think about how young Claudia was before she got turned by Lestat, because she's only 14 in the series, much younger in the book, but she's only 14 in the series, and after spending years as a vampire and her mind maturing into that of a young woman, her body doesn't do the same thing, and so that introduces such this interesting dichotomy to this character. And due to the abuse that both Claudia and Louis have suffered at the hands of Lestat, she decides to hatch a plan to kill him, involve Louis in it so they can escape to Europe and find some other vampires, in which they do. We start the season off with the two of them making their way throughout Europe. They eventually reach Romania because, of course, you would go to Romania. That's what all the legends say, because Romania equals Transylvania. And even though Dracula is not apparently a real thing in this, not that we would expect him to, you know, Dracula was written, it's a myth and everything. It is interesting to see the way that people react to vampires overseas, because things like crosses and garlic, these are things that definitely were talked about and played up both in the book and the movies, and to see that they hold no factual grounds at all in the Interview with the Vampire franchise. And I love that, because like so many other franchises also call out Bram Stoker as a hack, and I love Bram Stoker's Dracula, the book, the various films, like I really do enjoy it, but I love that like they kind of treat him as like an asshole basically who has no idea what he's talking about. But the flip of that, though, with this is that we see the despair that not just Claudia has as things become more futile, like not finding more vampires, but Louis as well, too, because Louis has invested so much into Claudia. He's betrayed what he feels is the love of his life in Lestat, and he still feels terrible about it, even though Lestat was abusive to both him and to Claudia, and that he really was left with no other hope, because Lestat is a very possessive individual as well, too. But it doesn't change the fact that Louis still feels guilt over the entire thing, and Claudia does see that. But Claudia, who's trying to find her own peace and her own like place in this world, a lot of times is choosing to ignore Louis' own pain and grief. And that ends up having to come out even more, because Louis is starting to get invested in human affairs. He sees injustices and these terrible things happening during a war in Europe, and in some cases really wants to intervene, but also has to be reminded and realize himself that if they intervene, if they become involved in everything that's going on with humans, all it does is bring scrutiny among him and Claudia, and potentially to other vampires. And as they happen upon a town in Romania that actually does have vampires currently attacking it, they soon realize that not everybody out there is necessarily like them. And it's almost heartbreaking, because they finally find another vampire who's not Lestat and who's not this terrible being that did what he did to Claudia. And unfortunately, it's a lot more of the same. There's a lot less hope with the vampires that they're encountering. And that brings upon a very interesting detail as well, to where we kind of find out that the taste of human blood can very much be affected by what's going on in their souls, in their hearts. That if we're dealing with somebody who's going through just a terrible life to where it's nothing but sadness and cruelty and never-ending pain and misery around them. It kind of taints the blood. Doesn't make it deadly by any means there, but you can see basically that these people aren't able to really, that the vampires don't really get that much nourishment from it, because the vampires that we do see, they're disheveled. They're nothing like Lestat or Louis or Claudia at all. They're not even like the one that committed these attacks against Claudia. And that just brings such an interesting thought process into how vampires operate, because you have to imagine there's other movies, books, TV shows out there that might try to imply the same thing, but they don't directly do it. So I love this addition to this lore here, that you know, what's going on in their everyday life can have a genuine effect on their food source, and how Louis can detect all of that and wants, like, he has to change his own mindset if him and Claudia are truly going to survive and truly going to see this mission out, because it's disheartening and it'd be so easy to give up and go back home, back to America after this encounter that they have, but they still decide to press on because there's got to be something else out there. And it's hard because in doing these reviews, I have to strike a fine line between what I want to say about the show versus the movie, the show versus the book, and so on at that point. And I've read the books. I love the books. You know, Interview with the Vampire is literally right over here from where my set's at. And I absolutely love that movie. It was like the second or third Blu-ray I ever bought. You know, one of the first DVDs I bought myself as well, too. But I'm going to try to be careful about necessarily spoiling things for those who don't know what's yet to come. And we saw the commercial that previews what's going to be coming along in this series, and there's a lot of good stuff coming up, including Louis and Claudia stumbling upon Santiago, Armand, and their theater troupe of vampires in Paris. And there's a lot that's going to be involved with that. You know, I love that for the moment at least, they're using Lestat in a way to where he can still be present and Sam Reed can still play this big role in the series. But for now, he's Louis' dark passenger. Like, it's kind of interesting how to like kind of relate it a little bit to Dexter. How, you know, a number of characters in Dexter have that dark passenger there that's not necessarily pushing them to murder anybody, but it's their conscience, honestly. And I like that more than just saying conscious, because especially when we're dealing with an individual like a vampire, it kind of fits in a little bit more. And Lestat is clearly being set up to be this dark passenger for who knows how long at this point. We don't know what's going to come out of that. Could Lestat be resurrected? Is Lestat possibly still alive? Because Lestat does tell Louis in this as well that he's hiding out waiting for Louis to be happy, which is a terrifying thought. So there's a lot in store to come here for this season, including the fact that now that we know that Rashid is Armand, and it's very, very clear that Armand is manipulating the situation in current times right now. Because as Louis is regaling his story back to Daniel from Claudia's diary pages, you know, he's regaling stuff that he's like, wait a minute, that's not what happened. This happened differently. And we find out later that that Armand has been hiding pages from Louis, that he took those pages out and Louis asked for them back. And immediately, given what we should know from, again, the books and the movies, and if you don't, you know, it's going to make it a very interesting season. It's interesting to look at season 1 now with this information and realize that Armand has probably been manipulating a lot more of this than what we think. And now, Lestat, on one hand, Lestat's a psychopath. He's a sociopath as well, too. Doesn't matter if we eventually get to his dark anti-hero stuff. But right now, he's in the role of being this sociopath and being this psychotic entity in Louis' life. Armand is not necessarily that yet, because we haven't seen any of the evil shit Armand has done. But we have to imagine there's not going to be that much to separate Armand and Lestat. Let's see how this unravels over the course of season 1. But that's going to do it for me tonight here, folks. Get subscribed, because I'm going to try to keep up with these for all of this season here. And let me know you like it or not. What do you want me to answer? What do you want me to talk about when I'm going over these reviews, so I can make sure I'm hitting that for y'all as well, too. But that's going to do it for me tonight. So stay tuned, Fang Gang. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.
Boy here is a big fan of Fangoria. So if you want to check out the world's best horror magazine that's out there. Get a chance to get yourself your own subscription, which I just got my first one back in 2022, and I don't regret it for a second. But if you want your own Fangoria subscription, or you like the Fangoria merchandise, then head over to the Fangoria shop and use my link if you want to save yourself some money, folks. That's an easy one to remember. Just go to shop.fangoria.com/axdew. Again, that's shop.fangoria.com/axdew, or use my specific code AXDEW at checkout. You can save 20% off your entire order, and that implies to a subscription and to one-time orders as well. You don't want to miss out, folks, because with the magnitude of horror movies we've had released in the last few years, and with what we have on the horizon, Fangoria is going to be your #1 source for all that great, juicy, bloody information in the world of horror. So again, head to shop.fangoria.com. Hey there, folks! Thanks for tuning in to T-Watch This Scary Movie. I appreciate you checking out another review or movie news, whether we're talking movies, TV shows, books, or games, whatever, it's all scary. Remember, you can check out new episodes every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on the YouTube page for video. That's youtube.com/C/Theron Reynolds Scary Movie. Again, youtube.com/C/Theron Reynolds Scary Movie. And you can check out the audio version on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Just search T Watch the Scary Movie or TWASM. Don't forget, my name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.